We hold the cards. We have objectives, and those objectives are clear. We can hold anything at issue. Anything. The United States military controls the fate of that country. We are not giving a nuclear weapon to terrorist thugs, and we are knocking the hell out of them. Their navy is gone. Their air force is gone. Their leaders are gone. Their anti-aircraft is gone. Everything is gone. At Royal Air Force Station Fairford in the United Kingdom, B-52H Stratofortress bombers were being prepared for a combat mission to destroy Iranian missile positions. On March 20th, the British government approved the use of British-based US facilities, including RAF Fairford and Diego Garcia, for combat operations. The work around the bombers was constant and detailed. Mechanics swarmed the 8 Pratt & Whitney TF-33 turbofan engines on each aircraft. They opened the engine cowling panels and inspected the turbine blades for cracks or foreign object damage. Ground crews drove hydraulic munitions loaders, known as MJ-1 jammer trucks, up to the aircraft carrying ordnance. The B-52H can carry up to 70,000 pounds of mixed weapons. For this mission, the primary munitions were 2,000-pound Mark 84 general-purpose bombs, each one about 12 feet long, and AGM-86C conventional air-launched cruise missiles. Weighing approximately 3,150 pounds each, these are capable of striking hardened targets from a standoff range of over 600 miles. Guided bombs, such as the GBU-31 JDAM, a 2,000-pound GPS-guided weapon, were also loaded for precision strikes on missile storage bunkers. The bombs and missiles were hoisted one at a time onto the external wing pylons and into the internal bomb bay, where they were locked onto the Common Strategic Rotary Launcher. The rotary launcher is the core of the B-52's internal weapons delivery system. It is a cylindrical drum mounted inside the bomb bay that holds up to 8 cruise missiles or bombs. When the weapons officer commands a release, the drum rotates to bring the next weapon into the drop position, allowing the aircraft to release its ordnance in sequence without opening and closing the bomb bay doors between each drop. The ground crew tested the rotary launcher mechanism, spinning it through its full rotation, confirming that each weapon station locked and released properly, and verifying the electrical connections between the launcher and the aircraft's fire control system. While the aircraft was being prepared on the flight line, the 5-man crew was also getting ready. The flight to the target area in Iran would take approximately 4 hours and 30 minutes one way. In the crew room, the pilots tested their oxygen masks, checking the seal against their faces, testing the regulator for proper flow, and confirming the intercom connection. They packed their personal flight bags with water, food, maps, checklists, and anything else needed for a mission lasting many hours. In the cockpit, the pilot and co-pilot strapped into their side-by-side ejection seats on the upper deck and began the pre-flight checklist. They entered the mission coordinates into the navigation system, programming the waypoints from RAF Fairford to the target area in Iran and the return route. Every instrument was checked: altimeters, airspeed indicators, engine gauges, fuel quantity, communications radios, and the terrain-following radar. Below the cockpit, on the lower deck, the navigator and the radar navigator took their seats side by side. The navigator sat on the right, responsible for the aircraft's route, timing, and ensuring the bomber arrived at every waypoint and the target on schedule. He was essentially the human GPS of the aircraft, constantly cross-referencing the navigation systems, telling the pilots to speed up, slow down, or adjust heading. The radar navigator sat on the left. He was the bombardier. His job was to identify the targets using the offensive avionics system, manage the targeting pods, select the correct weapons for each target, and release the ordnance at the precise moment to achieve maximum accuracy. He worked across 4 screens simultaneously, monitoring radar returns, weapon status, target coordinates, and delivery parameters. When the aircraft was fully loaded and all systems checked, the order to depart was given. The B-52 taxied out slowly to the runway at RAF Fairford, lined up on the center line, and the pilots pushed all 8 throttles forward. The heavy bomber accelerated down the runway, used most of its length under the weight of a full bomb load and fuel, and lifted off into the sky. The mission plan for the B-52 crews was as follows: take off from RAF Fairford, fly directly to Iran, and strike the assigned missile positions. After completing the strike, they do not return directly to the UK. Instead, they are to fly to Sofia Airport in Bulgaria for a refueling stop. After refueling in Sofia, they fly back to RAF Fairford. Two B-52s flew the mission together. They headed southeast across Europe and the Mediterranean directly toward Iran. When they reached the target area, the radar navigator on the lower deck took control of the weapons delivery. He confirmed the target coordinates on his screens, verified the weapon selection, and commanded the bomb bay doors to open. The rotary launcher inside the bay began spinning, bringing each weapon to the release position. Bombs and missiles dropped from the bay one after another in rapid sequence, falling toward the Iranian missile positions below. The radar navigator monitored each release, confirming separation and tracking the weapons to impact. Once the full payload was expended, the bomb bay doors closed and the aircraft turned away from the target area. The two B-52s followed the planned return route. Instead of flying directly to the UK, they diverted to Sofia Airport in Bulgaria for a refueling stop. Although the B-52's fuel tanks held enough to make it back to Britain without stopping, the mission plan called for the Bulgaria stop as a precaution and to maintain operational flexibility. On landing at Fairford, the drag parachute deployed from the tail of each aircraft, a large chute that billowed out behind the bomber, rapidly reducing speed on the runway and shortening the rollout distance. Meanwhile, at an American B-52 base in the United States, another crew received a rapid briefing. An additional bomber needed to be ferried across the Atlantic to RAF Fairford to continue the strike operations. The pilots reviewed the mission plan and flight route, checked the weather along the transatlantic corridor, and prepared for departure. Their aircraft was already fully serviced and waiting on the ramp, fueled, inspected, and loaded with the ordnance it would carry on its first combat sortie from the British base. The pilots loaded their personal gear and flight bags into the aircraft. There were several bags: survival equipment, mission publications, and crew provisions for the long flight. The B-52 taxied out and took off, heading east over the Atlantic. The pilots settled in for a long overwater crossing. Below them, on the lower deck, the navigator tracked the aircraft's position across the ocean, while the radar navigator monitored the weather for weather and the electronic warfare officer watched the threat receivers, even over friendly airspace, standard procedure on any B-52 flight. This aircraft was scheduled for one aerial refueling during the crossing. Hours into the flight, a KC-135 Stratotanker appeared on the radar ahead. The pilots made radio contact with the tanker crew and began the approach. The B-52 moved in from below and behind the KC-135, closing the distance carefully until the boom operator extended the refueling boom downward. The pilot held the bomber steady in position while the boom connected to the refueling receptacle on top of the B-52's fuselage. Fuel flowed. The transfer took several minutes. Once the tanks were full, the boom disconnected. The B-52 dropped back and away from the tanker and continued on course toward England.